There are some names, some words that just echo through history, and Chernobyl is one of them. Tonight, we're going to look at the anatomy of that catastrophe. It all starts here, April 26, 1986, 1:23 in the morning. Deep inside the Soviet Union, while most of the world is asleep, something has just been set in motion, something unthinkable.
And here's the truly chilling part. This wasn't some accident caused by a malfunction or an external event. No, it all started with a safety test. A routine test, one designed to make the plant safer.
But something goes horribly wrong. Within seconds, the reactor's power level just explodes. It surges, completely out of control, to 100 times its normal output. 100 times. And in that single instant, everything changes.
So let's get right into it. A midnight catastrophe. How does a safety test lead to the moment the world changed forever?
That power surge, it was apocalyptic. We're talking two massive explosions. Boom, boom, one right after the other. They were so powerful they blew the 1,000-ton concrete lid right off the reactor. Just gone. And with the core now open to the sky, it shot a column of deadly radioactive material straight up into the atmosphere. And then, the graphite inside caught fire. A nuclear fire that would burn for 10 days.
You just can't make this up. The worst nuclear disaster in human history was caused by a safety test. It's the ultimate, cruelest irony. A procedure meant to prevent a disaster was the disaster. So you have to ask, right? How on earth does something like that happen?
Well, to get to the bottom of it, we have to go back. We have to look at this fatal safety test. Because when you break it down, it was quite literally a recipe for disaster.
So what was the point of the test anyway? Well, on paper, it actually made a lot of sense. The question was pretty simple. If the power went out completely, could the turbines, just from spinning down, generate enough electricity to power the coolant pumps for about 60 seconds, just long enough for the backup diesel generators to fire up? A really important question, right? But the way they went about testing it, that's where everything went wrong.
It's like they were ticking boxes on a checklist of how to cause a meltdown. First, they deliberately turned off key automatic safety systems. Just disable them. Then, they brought the reactor down to a power level that was dangerously low, making it incredibly volatile. And if that wasn't bad enough, the test got pushed to the night shift, a crew who had never, ever rehearsed this procedure before.
And in the control room, there was one man calling the shots. Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer. His operators, they were scared. They could see the reactor was becoming a wild animal. They wanted to shut it all down. But Dyatlov, he wouldn't hear it. He overruled them, he yelled at them, he basically forced them to continue.
You know, the explosion was the start of the catastrophe. But what came next? In some ways, it was just as destructive. This wasn't just a meltdown of a nuclear core. It was a meltdown of truth itself. What followed was a cascade of denial.
I mean, look at this. The lie versus the reality. Just minutes after the blast, Anatoly Dyatlov stands there, looking at the absolute devastation, and says, the reactor is intact. But the reality? The 1,000-ton lid was gone, the core was burning, open to the night sky. This was the first lie, and it was a killer.
And because of that lie, the very first responders, the firefighters, they had no idea what they were running into. They were told it was a simple roof fire. They weren't warned about radiation. They were handling fragments of the reactor core, lethally radioactive graphite, with their bare hands. They were, in effect, sentenced to death the moment they arrived.
And this instinct to lie, to cover up, it wasn't just Dyatlov. It went all the way to the top. This official denial would end up costing an unimaginable number of lives. This is the price of lies.
Just look at this timeline. The delay it's just criminal. The firefighters arrive at 1:28 a.m., totally in the dark about the radiation. For the next 36 hours, the nearby city of Pripyat isn't evacuated. People are going about their lives while radioactive fallout rains down on them. It took 2 full days, and Sweden detecting the radiation halfway across Europe for Moscow to finally publicly admit there was a problem. And even when they did evacuate the nearly 50,000 people of Pripyat, they were told to just pack for 3 days. It's temporary, they said. They left their homes, their pets, their whole lives behind, thinking they'd be back soon. They would never return.
So then came the cleanup. And for that, they assembled an army. 600,000 people. They were called the Liquidators. These were the men sent in to contain a disaster that was still unfolding. They were on the roof, shoveling radioactive debris by hand. They were flying helicopters right over the exposed burning core. Many of them had almost no real protection. An incredible, unimaginable sacrifice.
And the official death toll, according to the Soviet Union, the final number they put out to the world, 31.
But the real number, the true cost, we'll probably never know for sure, but estimates put it in the tens of thousands. These are the deaths from cancer, from radiation sickness, the slow, painful toll that came years later, all of it a direct result of those first lies.
Because in the end, Chernobyl revealed something much bigger. It showed the world that it wasn't just a reactor that had collapsed that night. It was an entire system.
The true culprit here wasn't just one person. It was the system. You had a reactor design that was known to be flawed. It had a fatal bug, you could say. Under certain conditions, the exact conditions of the test, it was designed to get more powerful if it started to overheat, not less. And they knew about it. You had a culture where safety warnings were just ignored. And above all, you had an entire political structure where the image of the state was more important than the truth, and where anyone who tried to speak that truth was silenced.
Think about this. Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, he later said that Chernobyl, this single event, was maybe the real reason the Soviet Union collapsed. It laid bare all the rot at the core of the system for the whole world to see.
So what's the takeaway from all this? The final lesson, written in the radioactive dust of Chernobyl, is that the most dangerous words you can ever hear are, "Everything is under control." Because this wasn't just about a broken machine. It was about a broken system, about what happens when arrogance and lies become more important than truth. And that's a warning that is just as terrifying and just as relevant today.